everyone. Welcome to this evening's virtual event with Stephen Graham Jones. We're so thrilled that you're joining us. Just gonna watch as people fill the webinar. Welcome to our event. My name is Carol Centers and I'm the events director here at Bookshop Santa Cruz, where I'm broadcasting live. And here at Bookshop, our community is vital to us, locally, nationally, and even globally. And we are so grateful to you for spending your resources and your evening with us to celebrate books and literature in the midst of all this chaos. Tonight, we are thrilled to welcome one of Bookshop's favorite authors to discuss his new graphic novel, Memorial Ride, illustrated by Maria Wolf. Stephen's going to take the stage in just a moment, but before we get started, I have a couple of quick housekeeping notes. This event is being recorded so that you can rewatch it if you miss anything, and we'll send out the link tomorrow after the event. The chat field is open and we would love to hear where you're joining us from and celebrate Stephen with your fandom and all of your favorite books, anything you want to share in there. Just note that by joining this event, you are agreeing to refrain from engaging in inappropriate behavior and harassment of any kind throughout the course of this event. Please note that any participants who engage in inappropriate behavior will be immediately ejected from the event. We also have an audience Q&A a little bit later in the evening, and we welcome all of your questions. You can pop those into the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. You can pose questions anytime they occur to you. You can start right now if you want. You can also view and upvote other questions as well. If you see something that, that is the same question as you, feel free to upvote it. We encourage you to purchase the book tonight. Your purchase supports local jobs and independent culture, and it shows our publishers that our audience here in Santa Cruz is invested and engaged. And we also have signed book plates for you from Stephen Graham Jones himself. So if you order tonight, just add an order note in your order screen there requesting a book plate. If you already purchased the book and you want to grab a book plate, you can do so by coming to our info desk and just asking for one. So thank you so much for your purchase and your support. We do have some great upcoming virtual events coming your way. We've got Robbie Alameddine and Lucy Corrin in conversation and Jaime Cortez to discuss Gordo. So definitely check out our website for our complete calendar. We'll pop a link to that in the chat. But now onto the main attraction. Stephen Graham Jones is the New York Times bestselling author of nearly 30 novels and collections, and there's some novellas and comic books in there as well. Stephen's been an NEA recipient and has won numerous awards and prizes for his work, including the Texas Institute of Letters Award for Fiction, the LA Times Ray Bradbury Prize, the Mark Twain American Voice in Literature Award, the Independent Publishers Award for Multicultural Fiction, WLA's Distinguished Achievement Award, 3 Bram Stoker Awards, 2 Shirley Jackson Awards, 5 This Is Horror Awards, and he's been a finalist for the World Fantasy Award and the British Fantasy Award. I actually left some prizes off there too, so you know that we have a very esteemed guest here with us tonight. Stephen's also made Bloody Disgusting's top 10 horror novels, and he's the guy who wrote Mongrels, The Only Good Indians, and My Heart is a Chainsaw, which are on display here. We have plenty of copies of those as well, staff favorites here at the store. Stephen lives in Boulder, where he's joining us this evening, and I'm so honored and thrilled to welcome Stephen Graham Jones to our screens tonight.
Hello, thank you, Carl. That was a wonderful introduction. I'm honored to be here talking with y'all.
Oh, we're so glad you're here. Welcome to your third event of the day, as I found out. So I know you're going to kick us off with a little bit of an overview and some images of the new book, and then we'll kick it open for some audience engagement as well. So if you want to.
That's great. Thank you very much. Thank you all for being here too. I love talking about books. I love talking to people who go to bookstores. I guess that's kind of a needless thing to say, but I like to say it. I'm really glad that independent bookstores are there, you know, they're keeping the world reading, and that just thrills me to no end. But The Only Good Indians, not The Only Good Indians, I was digging that off of this book, Memorial Ride. The story of Memorial Ride, let's see, where does it start? It starts with about 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, one summer I fell into like a John Wayne hole, I guess you could say, which is to say I had to read everything I could on John Wayne, and I had to um, watch all of the old westerns. And I didn't watch his military stuff, the Green Beret stuff. I just watched the westerns. And I think when you fall into a like a John Wayne hole, I don't know if that's happened to any of y'all. It's not the best place to be, to tell you the truth. That really what you're doing is you're kind of confronting America, because I think we have a lot of like myths that America has a lot of myths that let it function. And I think one of the main ones is the cowboy myth, which is typified by John Wayne. And so me falling into a John Wayne hole was really me. It felt like trying to engage or understand or confront or push back against America in some way. Like it's kind of like know your enemy, I feel like, and I feel like John Wayne was and is my enemy, just because Indians in his movies, we were always just fodder. We were to be fed into the Gatling gun. We were background characters, we were less than human. And so I thought it would be really fun to write a story where there's a gang of drugstore stick-up artists called the John Waynes. And in my initial conception of it, they all wore John Wayne masks, like pullover masks. But I didn't anticipate how difficult that would be for an artist to draw. It's really hard to draw one John Wayne, much less draw four John Waynes that are each different enough that we can tell who's who. That's really tricky. And also to continue that from panel to panel, page to page. So we backed off the John Wayne masks in Memorial Ride and ended up using like train robber bandanas, more or less, which was completely effective. It worked wonderfully, I think. But as for Memorial Ride, I guess to sum it up, to synopsize it, Coopertown is this guy in the military. He's deployed over in Afghanistan. His father dies while he's over there. And he's very estranged from his father. They don't talk. They haven't spoken for a long time. However, and when he gets the news that his father died, he's in the brig too for punching at his commanding officer. So Coopertown uses his father's funeral as an excuse to come back stateside for the weekend, and it's really to see his girlfriend Sherry Moon. And so while he's over, like attending his father's funeral, getting his father's flag, reuniting with Sherry, he also inherits his father's old Harley, which his dad was always leaving on. His father was military as well, like Coop is, and Sherry and Coopertown, putter around that Harley. They're at a drugstore where one of those heists is going down, and they don't quite foil it, but they do tangle with the John Wayne gang in a way that gets the John Wayne gang chasing them all across Oklahoma, New Mexico, Colorado. The DPS is chasing them as well, the state troopers, and they're all over the news, and it's just one close shave after the next for them, basically. And they're not necessarily trying to solve who are these John Waynes. They're just trying to survive these next 5 minutes, pretty much, and preserve the relationship too. So I'm going to read you 4 or 5 pages here from part 2. This Memorial Ride is in 4 parts. And it's like this book is put together as if it's a trade collection of a 4-issue limited series. So the 4 parts are each 1 issue. They're each 22 pages long, I believe. And by the second part, they're already on the run. They're cooking across. I think they're in New Mexico by now, or they're crossing into New Mexico. And Coopertown is trying to learn how to drive his father's bike. He never bothered to learn that. I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to click you through some panels as I read. And my initial plan was to get a version of Memorial Ride that didn't have the lettering done. Lee Francis did the lettering. He's also the editor for this, one of the editors, Lee Francis IV. But then I realized if it doesn't have any letters, then I don't know what to say, So I think it's good that it has the letters in there. And if if I can get this screen share started, we'll take off. All right, here we are. I'm guessing y'all can all see that cover. If not, I'm sure Coral would come and tell me that you can't. So, Memorial Ride. And that's an amazing cover, isn't it? I love that cover that Maria Wolf did. And, I should talk, when this is done, remind me, I'll try to talk about working with an artist and that whole process, which has been wonderful for Memorial Ride and for this book. I really like that cover. And that's the cover to part 2. And both of those are in color, but the interior pages are black and white, which gives it a good feel, I think. So part 2, some rides you have to make. That's Coopertown right there, and that's Sherry Moon. And Coopertown is named after the Baseball Hall of Fame town. His dad wanted him to be a baseball player, not a soldier. Sherry Moon is M-U-N, not M-O-O-N, like Rob Zombie's wife. And that Mustang that she's leaning against is only in the story for a short while. Here we go. They're heading towards Albuquerque. Coop thought it was 1 down, 3 up. He's trying to learn those gears, and there's all that clank, scrunch, all the I love doing little bursts of SFX sound effects like that. Wanted by the authorities, probably wanted by the bad guys. Honk, honk, honk. You think I can't cut that mustache out by the roots? Sherry Moon is pretty free with her knife. She is pretty aggressive too. I was doing it perfect earlier, Coop says. Neither's going to look good for the court martial board. Which is to say, if Coopertown doesn't get back to his flight to the Middle East on time, he gets court-martialed. What? I can't hear you, he says to Sherry Moon. I said, does my hair really look like that? Like on the news? There they are in the news. And because it was a muddy scene at the drugstore, they're assumed to have been part of the heist. Your hair always looks good. It always looks good. It's hair, I mean. Zipping around between cars, pretty close call. I wouldn't make that cut, I don't think. So you knew him, that other soldier? At the drugstore heist, another soldier was present, and he didn't fare as well as Cooper and Sherry. His name was Street. Fourth. He was thirsty, so he had to pee a lot. Tucumcari, New Mexico. 5 minutes, Coop says. Not if we go through the same door, soldier boy, and lock it. Cooper is considering this pretty seriously. We may not live to see tomorrow. I mean, we need to get that $3,000. And I love that exclamation point. That's what you can do in comic books that you can't do in prose fiction, and you can't really get away with it very well on screen either, unless you're doing Scott Pilgrim or something. We need to get that $3,000. Baseball. Baseball terms, go. Foul ball, home run, rounding second base. He's going to make it. He's sliding home. He's safe. Coop. Sherry's limbering up that knife already. And the DPS is right there. Listen, I was there. I know what really happened at the drugstore. Trust me, these John Waynes, they aren't taking any prisoners. Safest place for you two? It's in the back of my car. She's just really trying to keep them safe. Whoa, take her easy there, Pilgrim. If I was a better voice actor, I'd do that in the fake-o John Wayne voice. Don't you know, Cabrera? Out here, due process is a bullet. Marion, is that you? I swear, if you don't, you'll arrest me. Write on the report that twice in 1 day, somebody got the drop on you. You've been watching the news again, haven't you? Micah's and Telegraph, Chica. You best get on that bad motorcycle there, Pilgrim. I can't hold this one much longer. Jail here, jail there, or $3,000, which is what they're going to sell the motorcycle for when they get to New Mexico, so they can have some run around money. Kid, listen, the John Waynes, they're painting the walls with people back there. You seriously piss him off. You don't want Kid, Sherry Moon says. He can fly 10,000 miles across the ocean, shoot people he doesn't know, people he has to live with in his head now, and you still call him Kid? I don't know who you think you're talking to, Miss Moon. And Cabrera is pulling something out of her holster. Sit down, Marion. I love the way that Mariah Wolf did that particulate spray there, that pepper spray, that mace. I don't think you know who you're talking to, Miss Culebra. That means snake, yeah. Cabrera, actually, it means goat herder. Coop, let's go get our money. What do you call a young, stupid goat who needs herding? Kid. but you're just done with your father's funeral. Nothing makes you feel like a kid so much as thinking about your dad. Nothing makes you feel like a kid so much as having one from a jail cell or a brig. If you're lucky, if you're not, another funeral, another flag. And that's a sample of Memorial Ride. I'll stop this share right quick. And I told you I was going to talk about, working with an artist. The wonderful thing about working with an artist, especially one who really knows what she's doing, is that I can write like all these words for every panel, every page. I can just I'm a writer, I'm full of blocks of text, but a good artist can erase all those and elegantly draw something on the page that completely says what I was trying to say with all these words and does a little bit more even. Um, it's really amazing. When I wrote Memorial Ride, the script back, after that John Wayne summer, which is, I guess I do have a John Wayne summer in my life. That's a weird thing to think. But back when I wrote the script, I had no artist and I had no prospects to turn this into a comic book or a graphic novel. So I thought this script was going to be the last stage of this project's life. Therefore, I wanted to make it complete unto itself without needing art. So I overwrote the script. I described every angle in the panels, every transition, every layout, how the gutters worked. I described everything just to make it real because I didn't imagine I would ever get an artist. But then University of Mexico Press calls me up, and evidently they had already teamed up with Red Planet, kind of just throwing around the idea of, what if we did a book together? Red Planet's the only native comic book store in the world, and University of New Mexico Press is right there, and they're all good people, all cool people, smart people, capable people. And so they said, hey, let's do something together. And luckily enough, they called me up and they said, have you ever thought about doing a comic book? And I said, well, I do have this 160-page script right here. I don't know if it's that long. It's pretty long. And I think the comic book is 80 some odd pages, which is to say, again, I overwrote the script. And when I say I overwrote it, what I mean is the way I wrote the script is kind of using the potential artist, the prospective artist, as a hand I have that can draw, and that's not how you're supposed to use artists. I think the best kind of script to deliver to a comic book artist is give them the story beats, give them the text, the dialogue, the captions, maybe the SFX, and let them figure the layout out. I'm not saying like shift that burden to them, but give them freedom and room to play and figure things out. And I think you end up with a lot better project. Luckily with this project, Lee Francis found Maria Wolf for me, and I looked at some of her art, and she can draw werewolves like nobody else. And so I knew that she had to be the one, of course, for Memorial Ride. And I think she definitely is the one for Memorial Ride, as the product attests. And luckily, she, as far as I know, anyways, was not insulted by how overwritten the script is. She was able to. What it feels like is she went through with a highlighter and picked the actual 12 essential words on this page instead of my 300 words. And that makes for a better story, really. And yeah, there were changes that happened from the script to the completed product, but that's the way it should be. I'm not vain enough to think that I figure everything out right the first time. I'm not that lucky, nor that smart. So working with an artist, working with Maria was amazing. She is very, very talented, very capable, very disciplined and diligent. Couldn't have asked for anyone else. She did the pencils, she did the inks, she did the coloring on the colored pages, and then Lee came in and did the lettering. And the lettering takes a lot of editing too, because all of the words I write don't always fit in speech blends. So Lee has to figure out what fits, what's a distillation of all this junk Steven's saying. And then I have to come back in and make it sound like the characters again. And so there's a lot of passes that are necessary. And also some of the changes that we ended up doing in this story, I then had to fix them with the words because it was too late to fix the art. And that was a fun challenge. It felt like you always hear about that old Marvel method with Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, where Stan Lee would pace around his office and kind of come up with explosive scenes for Jack Kirby to draw, and Jack Kirby would go boom, 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 draw him. He's a really fast artist. Come back, give Stan Lee all these pages, and then Stan Lee would write the words after the art, So there were times in Memorial Ride where that was kind of how it was going, and that was a really fun challenge. I had never anticipated having to do something like that. Very, very cool. But anyway, I'm really proud of this book, and I feel very fortunate to be getting to play in comic book land. I feel like comic books saved my life, to be honest. If I had any cartooning ability, who knows if I ever even find prose fiction. Um, I found comic books when I was 12 years old. We lived so far out in the country in West Texas that we would go to town every 2 weeks on a Wednesday afternoon to get groceries. But me and my brothers, and I had two brothers at the time, we would pile into the Suburban and book it to town. And it was a long enough drive that we'd have to stop at this lonely gas station out in the middle of a pasture to get gas because that Suburban had a 454 and it just, drank that gas right out. But it was quick, it was fast, it had some power. But anyways, my mom, while she was fueling up, would give each of us kids 3 quarters and say we could go in the gas station and buy anything we wanted, which is, a dream come true when you're 12 years old. And my brothers were 9 and 5, I guess. And so it was especially a dream for them, I guess. I'm surprised I didn't steal their money from them, actually. But every time I would just zero in on that cooler in the back of the store because I needed a can of Dr. Pepper because Dr. Pepper is the best. Why would you drink anything else, but this time on that Wednesday afternoon, when I'm beelining that cooler in the back, I kind of get apprehended, stopped by this thing I'd never seen before. Maybe it wasn't there. Maybe I'd been walking past it for months. I don't know. It was a spinning rack with comic books in it, and I gave it a spin and looked at all these like garish colored covers going past. And I finally stopped on one, which was Secret Wars #4, which has the Incredible Hulk bent down, holding up a mountain on his shoulders, and it says, the words say, he's holding like 9 billion tons. How long can you do that? And I was like, I don't even know. So I had to buy the book with my 3 quarters instead of get a Dr. Pepper. And I fell in love. That was my first time reading a comic book, my first time encountering superheroes. It was amazing. And I mean, I say first time encountering superheroes because they weren't on TV. I mean, I guess the old Adam West Batman might have been somewhere on my 2.5 channels I had. But to tell you the truth, the only thing I could find on my TV when I was a kid was Leave It to Beaver and Father Knows Best, and sometimes the Brady Bunch. So, there was no Spider-Man, no Hulk in that. And I like Secret Wars enough that every 2 weeks I would be back to that spin rack waiting for the next issue of Secret Wars. And it's a 12-issue limited series. Number 10. Well, I guess I should tell you the premise of Secret Wars. Secret Wars is there's this cosmic entity in a kind of a side dimension or another dimension, another plane of existence, who accidentally peeks through into our world and sees all this stuff that's not in its dimension. And it says, I want to understand good and evil. So it plucks a handful of superheroes, a handful of villains, and puts them on this hodgepodge planet in the middle of nowhere and says, y'all fight it out. And from them fighting it out, this Beyonder is going to learn what's good, what's evil. And so as the issues roll out, it's people, just a lot of little skirmishes, a lot of battles, a lot of discoveries of new weapons and costumes, and it's all fun stuff. However, one of the villains that's been taken there is Dr. Doom, the Fantastic Four's nemesis and kind of the world's nemesis. He's like a pretty evil genius. Dr. Doom does not want to play this game. He's nobody's chess piece. He's much more brilliant than that and pretty capable. So he, instead of fighting Captain America and Thor and all them, he comes at the Beyonder, at this cosmic entity. And the Beyonder has unlimited power. Yet Dr. Doom comes at him, and in doing so, he takes all this damage. His leg falls off, one of his arms falls off. He is functionally dead, but he keeps on going. He wants the power badly enough that he doesn't let all the damage he's taking stop him. And he finally gets that power too, which is just amazing. He is Dr. Doom after all. And so all my time after that, I read that when I was 12, and I held on to that issue in my head at least for all my life, but especially until I was about 18, because over the next 6 years, I would just face, like the way I'll do, I guess, but I would just face adversity after adversity, situation after situation, where the only thing I would have to fall back on was Dr. Doom. I would tell myself, if Dr. Doom could push back against these insurmountable odds and get that power, if he could take all that damage and keep going, then I can too. I can, whatever situation I'm in, I can keep going. And so I guess what I'm saying is, had I not read Secret Wars number 10, I don't know if I make it through high school, even, if I make it out alive. I think I would have just stayed somewhere because it was too difficult. I wouldn't have pushed on. So me getting to playing comics with Memorial Ride is, to me, paying back into a system that has been so essential to my own survival and my own identity, you know? And that's the story of me and Memorial Ride, I guess. Oh, I should also add, I say it's a story. There's also a little bit more. Um, my father is military, he's in the Air Force. So I grew up with, chain of command. There's all the, and going to Air Force bases and all that stuff. So it was kind of fun to um go back there, because I'm a few months away from being 50 and I haven't hung out on Air Force bases for a long, long time. So it was neat to kind of go back to that culture a little bit for me, you know. And I should also say that when I was 19, my biggest dream in the world was to buy a cheap used up Harley for $1,500 out of a 30 nickel and just take off across America. I think a lot of young people have that dream, and I never did it. So now I can do it a little bit in Memorial Ride, I feel like. But thank y'all for listening to me. And I want to answer whatever questions y'all have got too, of course.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I love seeing you kind of like read from the book itself and hearing your voice in it. It's really fun. Yeah, so let's take some audience questions too. Reminder for folks, you can pop your questions into the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. We've got a couple coming in here. Question from Dana. Do you have favorite comic graphic novel recommendations right now? Or
Yeah, right now. I mean, I guess I should say too, like there's like comic books, graphic novels, and in between them there's like trades. And a trade is like I consider Watchmen a trade actually. Watchmen came out episodically in 12 issues, and then it was bound up into a book with a spine, and so it could sit on a shelf and all that stuff. But because it came out episodically, I consider it a comic book, and I consider the book form to be a trade. Whereas Fun Home, Alison Bechdel's Fun Home, was published as a single thing, and so I consider it to be a graphic novel. And then, of course, there's the floppies you can get every month; those are comic books. To tell you the truth, I think graphic novel is a term that is kind of angling for respect. It's like saying, look at us, we're respectable, like comic books. And but when
it
you
has the
start
word
saying,
novel in it. So
I know. And when you start saying that, though, what you're doing is you're ceding ground already. You're saying, we know the conception is we're not respectable, but look, we're respectable. And I don't think that's a good starting place. I call it all comic books, really. But yes, I do have favorites. Watchmen is, of course, one of my favorites. I love the question that Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons pose in there. What if superheroes were real? And they let that go really well. I bet my favorite from recently, and I say recently, this is what, 2016, 2017. I think it's 2016 probably. My favorite thing is Monsters by Emil Ferris. That book blows me away. I've read it a lot of times and I cannot get enough. Another one would be Day Tripper by Moon and Ba, which that book, it came out episodically, I believe, 9 issues possibly. It's just amazing. I do not understand that book. That book works like a David Lynch movie does, where I can't articulate the logic of it, but I can feel it inside, and I love that about a reading experience. Let's see. And of course, I mentioned Fun Home. I love Fun Home. Really, I consider Fun Home and Art Spiegelman's Mouse to kind of be on the same plane. I mean, they're cartoonists telling their life story, basically. And they have they have the same tools. They express things differently. But both those books are amazing, amazing, amazing. I can't stop reading them ever. Let me think. I think my favorite character in comic books is Grendel. Matt Wagner's Grendel. He kind of wears like a black Spidey suit, but it's got different eyes. And it's really, Grendel is kind of like an identity, like Ghostface from Scream. And so Grendel, I don't know, the persona goes from character to character throughout the long, crazy branching history of Grendel. But also, man, I love the Max. The Max is Sam Keith's Image title from probably 90 or 91. And there's like 6 volumes of it if you get the hardcovers. That story is so amazing. It's a superhero who is actually a homeless dude who is really confused about a lot of things, but that story is just so touching. That's what I like. I like stories to make me feel, I mean, I like the rush and wow, are they going to make that jump? Is the Hulk going to be able to hold that mountain up? I love that stuff. But at the end of the day, I just want to feel something,
Yeah, totally. Kind of as a follow-up, and thank you for all those amazing recommendations. Ted's also wondering any straight up comic book series ideas ahead for you.
Yes, there is. It's probably going to announce really, really quickly here, but yes, I am signing with a house to do an ongoing series, and I'm really excited about that. Yeah, I wish, and I think I know Ted, so
Okay.
I can tell him definitely.
Okay. Keep in mind, you're telling some additional people too, but please. You're going to phone him afterwards to give him the inside story, but oh, can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, for some reason, I think it's my end. I think my speakers, yeah, I'm good. I'm hearing you.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. All right. Well, Ted's going to get the inside scoop. We will stay tuned. We'll be staying tuned for that news. So thank you so much. Question from Jocelyn about, did you always know that this story of Memorial Ride would be a graphic novel rather than a prose work?
I did, yes. I knew that this was a story that was going to need to jump in certain ways in order to tell itself. And with a comic book, as opposed to prose fiction, when you turn the page, that's like a jump. It can jump you into a different story space, geographically, chronologically, whatever. And I needed that ability because otherwise I would have to stage all these transitions between this and this. But with comic books work with different mechanisms, and I needed the mechanisms of comic books to tell the story of Memorial Ride. I need to be able to jump in a way that I'm not good at jumping in prose fiction.
Totally. Yeah, it kind of has that like cinematic type vibe.
Yeah.
You move to the next, and now we're on the road, and now we're at the gas station, and you kind of get them there.
And you can do close-ups too.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying you can't do close-ups in fiction, but it works a little differently. I wanted this story to work in a comic book way.
Cool. Thank you. We have a friend of yours and mine, Kelly, is wondering, how did working on Memorial Ride differ from your experience with Marvel Indigenous Voices #1? And do you have a preference?
Oh, that's a good question. And y'all can see the book that Kelly edited right over your right shoulder there, Mongrels. Yeah, Kelly was my editor for that. I'm forever grateful to her for letting me look at Pretty Werewolves for so long. But yeah, Marvel Voices, the way that worked was they called me up and they said, "Hey, do you want to be part of this?" And I said, "What is this?" And it was let's have Indigenous writers write Indigenous characters, which it doesn't seem like that should be revolutionary, but it kind of is in comic book world. And I said, "Yeah, maybe. Who do I get to do?" I figured I was going to do Shaman from Alpha Flight or something, and they said, "Whoever you want." And I was like, "Whoa, that's like too much freedom. I don't know what to do with that many choices." So I pretty immediately I landed on Silver Fox because she's from the same part of the country the Blackfeet are from, and so I thought that like culturally I could identify with her better than I could any of Marvel's other characters. And also talking about Silver Fox, I was able to kind of have Wolverine and Sabretooth in there a little bit towards the end, and they're two of my favorite people to read and I guess to write a little bit. But what was really fun about Silver Fox is that we kind of her if you look at her timeline, it's really spotty. There's a lot of blank spaces where we don't know what is up with her, where she's going, what she's been doing, and those are the blank spaces that I can fill. And so that's what I did with my issue of Marvel Voices. I went back and filled in those blank spaces. I had her and this mutant guy Trigo slipping into a fort in Alberta in the fur trapping days and doing some damage, and I thought it was really fun to do that. As for working on that project, I wrote the script first. Well, first I pitched the idea. I had to pitch the idea of, Silver Fox sneaks into a fort and does some damage. And they were like, go for it, dude. And so then I wrote 10 pages of script, and I did it differently than I did Memorial Ride. I did it a lot more skeletally to give the artist more room to do what he wanted to do. And so then the artist gave us back layouts and thumbnails, and they all looked great to me, and we said go for it, and he drew them and did it amazingly. And just as with Memorial Ride, the bulk of the editing seems to come at the lettering phase, because this editor, who is really on her game, she knows her stuff really, really well. She would say, let's move this speech balloon over here and let it cross this panel. Let's do this tail like this. And all those things are they're just really, really slight adjustments, but they make so much difference. And it's really nice to work with professionals like that. Marvel, they know what they're doing comic book wise, I feel. Whereas it was a different process with Memorial Ride. As I said, I had that script sitting in a drawer when they called, and so I was just able to, what I had to do was reach over here and say, here's this, so it was a totally different process.
Gotcha. That's cool. Yeah, I definitely appreciated like the layering of the speech bubbles, and it can kind of, it mimics that actual conversation, visual way. That is really enjoyable. We have a question here about from Jocelyn. Can you talk more about some of those archetypal ideas in Memorial Ride, cowboys, military, motorcycles, etc., and how you wanted to work with them in this?
Yeah, probably cowboys. I mean, to tell you the truth, what we consider like Old West cowboys and what we now consider outlaw bikers, you always see those blankets at truck stops. It's kind of like the same character ghosting onto each other. It's the same thing. So I feel like that myth is very it does overlay the two separate myths aren't that separate, I guess is what I'm saying. But the myth of the cowboy, it's not about horsemanship or like ethical relationships with the land or anything like that. I think the myth of the cowboy, that I think why people identify with the cowboy, is we always have this idea that a cowboy is going to be on his horse, and it's usually a guy, so his horse, cresting over a mountain in Montana and Wyoming and Utah, and they're going to see a valley that's unseen for centuries. And that's like the dream of America, that this is all unclaimed virgin territory. But of course, that valley has people living in it. That's kind of the thing. It's not unseen for centuries. It's lived in for thousands of years. And so the myth of the cowboy is like a constant erasure of the native peoples in my conception anyways. And so I do want to always be pushing back against that. But at the same time, I just taught a grad seminar on the Western. I love Westerns. I love how they work. I especially like Westerns that push back or undercut the idea of like the rugged individual, who's going to make it by the force of his or her will and all that stuff. And I think if I can ever figure out a way to take out the knees of the myth of the Old West, that'll do a lot of good for Indian America,
Totally. Yeah, which is good for all of us, Wow, thanks. Cool. So I'm also wondering if you can talk some about like how you guys, did you work with Mariah about the color panel or the lack thereof in like black and white versus adding color? How was that decision kind of come to?
I think that decision was made above both of our heads. Actually, I asked New Mexico Press early on in the process. I asked, are we going to do color or black and white? And they said black and white. And so it wasn't even a discussion. It was just, they told me, but I did lobby really hard for the covers of the individual parts to each be color.
Yeah.
And they look really good. They're good, like dividers, I guess you could say. But Mariah's stark black and white with her really good line work as far as like width of the inking and stuff. I think it totally works as black and white. And although at a signing table, man, a couple of weeks ago, I guess, someone brought me a Memorial Ride to sign, and I had to pull up my silver Sharpie because it's got a black title page, and I happened to open a page further, and she was coloring it. She was like, she was doing the coloring herself. And I think people should do that. I think we should put a coloring book sticker on this book so people can, flesh it out like they want.
That's awesome. That was honestly a thought I had when I opened it up
Mhm.
for the first time, and like
Mhm.
it kind of welcomes that space because maybe
Yeah,
of the nature of the line work and stuff. And
yeah,
two, I think there's something really cool about it being black and
mm,
white too, because it allows your imagination to kind of fill in. It doesn't do all
yeah,
the work for you, you know, you kind
yeah.
of,
Yeah, that's what Scott McCloud says, right? That as far as comic book panels or representations go, if you see a hyper realistic photo of a business person, you think, oh, that's them. I'm still me. But if you see just the simplest drawn smiley face, you can step into that space and look out from that smiley face's eyes because it's so blank you can't inhabit it, you know. And I think black and white has a lot of that to it. And I think that's like talking to Art Spiegelman. I think that's why even though these are all mice and cats and some frogs and moose and dogs and stuff, I think that that's why we can engage it and identify with it. I think that I think color and mouse would kind of serve to as a wall to keep us out, you know.
yeah, totally. That's cool. Um, so you had mentioned also earlier that you had considered trying it with, now, did I hear this right? Trying it with no words. Did I catch that right?
Oh no, for the that little when I was reading and I was clicking through the panels, I'd initially wanted to put that little slideshow without just the art, without the lettering,
I gotcha.
and which would have been cool, I think, because then you don't. I mean, if I'm speaking the words, then visually you don't need the words. But as I said, turns out visually I need the words. So I don't know what to say.
Totally. Cool. I was like, wow, that would have been a really far editing, like all the way out from 30 words to 12 words to
Yeah,
no
yeah,
word.
yeah, yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. So,
Mm,
are there, you said this has kind of been your first event specifically for Memorial Ride.
mm.
How has it been different to kind of talk about the graphic novel versus your prose work, which is, also very celebrated?
Probably the big difference for me is that, it's for 20 years now, I've been talking about prose fiction to people and having a ball doing it. So it's not that I have canned answers, but I know how to navigate those questions anyways.
Yeah.
Comic books, comic book discussions to me are super exciting because I don't know what the questions are going to be, you know. So it's like, oh, I was so happy that somebody asked me what are some titles that they can read, you know. That's not a question I get asked when I'm talking about My Heart is a Chainsaw, The Only Good Indians, Not the Mannequins, any of the other ones, you know.
Totally. Well, you were ready to go with those too, which is great. I think a lot of times people just like freeze up, it's like
Yeah,
something that the mind goes blank. So you were
yeah.
like ready with those recommendations.
Well,
So,
I'm already thinking of ones that I forgot. So.
oh, good. Please lay them on us. We had someone in the chat, a teacher saying,
Yeah.
she said, as a teacher who's taught Mouse and Persepolis, thanks for the
Mm,
shout out to those great stories. So I think
yeah,
it is
yeah,
becoming, you kind of mentioned like graphic novel gives it this sheen or whatever,
yeah,
but maybe
yeah.
it also like allows it to be taught in schools more where, oh, we're going to teach a comic book, like wouldn't really
Mhm.
fly in the same way.
I think it does. The title that I was thinking of that I've loved from recently is Jeff Lemire's Underwater Welder. Such an unexpected story with such a good emotional punch, and it really. I've never read anything from Jeff Lemire that I wasn't completely smitten with. He understands story, but he understands how comic books work. Like
Mhm.
of everybody on the scene, I think Jeff Lemire, Matt Wagner, who does Grendel, and Tim Seeley of Hack and Slash. Those three guys, they really understand how to move in the story units that comic books allow or provide, which is panels and pages. And
Mhm.
that's the hard part. Like comic scripts take me longer to write than prose fiction because in prose fiction, I say prose fiction, like is there poetry fiction? Well, what kind of distinction am I trying to make there? But
Sure. Yeah.
in fiction, I don't have to outline things because I've got 212 pages or I've got 598 pages. I've got however many pages I need, pretty much.
Right.
But in comic books, like especially doing episodic, month by month stuff, you got 22 pages, and so you've got to figure out how much story will fit in those 22 pages, and is the 22 page cutoff a good trampoline to the next issue,
Mhm.
and what is going to fit on each individual page, and how are you going to stage the splash pages such that they're kind of a surprise to the reader. There's so many things to take into account. You have to do a lot of pre-planning, like you have to do a lot of footwork before you actually get to the story, and that to me takes a lot longer.
Wow. Kind of makes me think of like, speaking of poetry, it's like with those oh, this is from high school, so I'm forgetting, but like, there's the, like with sonnets or these different
Yeah,
formulas of how you make it
yeah,
and kind of give birth to different creative reaches that if you were
yeah.
just going free form.
It definitely can. I remember back in the 90s, I heard a poet talking about that, about how when you're writing a villanelle or a sestina or a sonnet or whatever, the critical portion of your mind is so focused on getting this meter right or this rhyme right or this repetition right that something real can sometimes slip onto the page. Like he called those baffles. He called those formal constraints baffles, and I think
Wow.
that's a good word for it. And that's kind of how I use genre. Horror, science fiction, fantasy, whatever, as a baffle. I have to ring these certain bells, but sometimes while I'm so busy trying to get those bells rung, like everything that happens in a slasher, something real can actually happen on the page. And
Yeah.
comic books, the form of the comic book, the panel on the page, and the limitation of pages themselves is a really, really strict constraint that it's kind of wonderful to work within.
That's so cool. Do you feel like you had mentioned you talked so beautifully about the impact of cartoons in your youth and those visualizations and all that stuff? I'm wondering when you're writing prose and your amazing horror stuff, like is that imagery coming through similar like a comic book style, like that kind of graphic violence and stuff when you're writing the words on the page?
It kind of is. I think when I'm writing prose fiction, I tend to dial things more to the melodramatic end of the spectrum,
Mm.
whereas I feel like in comic books, I'm a little bit more restrained. I'm not sure why that is really. Maybe it's because I don't want to ask the artist to draw something this ridiculous, maybe just 80% ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah. They're going to do that. They're going to come up with that stuff
Yeah,
themselves. So
yeah, yeah.
cool. Cool. Well, folks are loving your recommendations. If you want to come be a bookseller with us, we would appreciate that. I did want to ask you about your library behind you,
Yeah.
and yeah, and then we also have a request for other prose recommendations if you're up for it. So yeah, I'd love to hear
Mhm.
about what's on your shelves behind you there.
Oh man, it's just this is probably, I don't know, 20% of my books. The rest of them are in my office on campus. These are the ones that I don't want walking away, I guess. And probably 2/3 of this is novels and story collections. And then this section, no, I'm sorry, this section over here behind my hand, that's mostly comic books. And that section is really metastasizing and trying to take over the whole room. I'm having to figure things out,
Yeah, danger.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's great. And do you have favorite prose that you want to like?
Oh
You willing to
man.
share with us? Yeah.
Yeah, that is a surprising question. I usually don't get asked that. I usually get asked
Oh.
like, what are the hot new horror writers, that kind of stuff. But just
Mhm.
all in all, one of my favorite books that I've never run into a single person who's read this book. It's by a guy named Luigi Menehelo, which is Meneghelo, an Italian guy. This is translated into English from Italian, and it's a novel called The Outlaws. It's about Italian resistance fighters in World War II. Like they run up to the mountains, and it's basically kids, some adults, and they want to push back against this, they're being overrun, but they're also really nice guys, and so they go down with clubs to fight the soldiers, but they wrap their clubs in soft stuff so they won't really hurt the soldiers. And it's just such a touching novel. I
Oh,
love that novel. Whenever I see it, which is never, I buy
huh.
it because it doesn't really exist that often. I'll
How did
order
you
a copy.
how
How did
did
I
you come
find it?
across?
I
Yeah.
was in a library. I think I was in Texas Tech Library, possibly. It could have been Florida State Library. I'm not sure. One of the schools I went to was in the library, and I was just I used to go to the library and just walk the stacks for an hour or two just to look for titles that would pop out. And The Outlaws popped out at me. That
Hmm.
sounds like a happening book, and I took a chance on it, and it blew me away.
Wow.
Really blew me away. I'm about to start today for the sixth time, I guess, because I'm teaching it, to read Donald Ray Pollock's Knock 'em Stiff story collection. I think that's the most amazing story collection we've had, man, since what? Let me think. What was the big one before that? I don't know. I might have to go all the way back to Laurie Moore or Tobias Wolff. I'm
Hmm.
not sure, but
Hmm.
I really like Donald Ray Pollock's Knock 'em Stiff. It blows me away every time I read it. I think the hottest one I've read since then is probably Adam Johnson's Fortune Smiles. He's got
Oh,
some really good stories in that book. Um, but I forgot. What am I doing? I'm telling things to read.
you're
That's what
giving
I'm
me like the best stack for Christmas break ever. So thank you. This is
yeah.
like
Yeah. I would
special.
also recommend Gemma Files. She has a novel, Experimental Film. I want to say it's from 2012, but I could be totally wrong about that. It's from that area. Experimental Film is a horror novel, and I think it does every single thing a horror novel should ever do. Like the same way when you think of film, of horror film, I
Mhm.
think The Ring or the American adaptation of The Ring, or it does everything a horror movie should do. In the same way, I think Gemma Files' experimental film does everything that a horror novel should do. It's amazing. Really, really, it's really scary, and it moves, but it's interior and it's you got good emotions. It's just all around good.
Awesome. Wow, this is like the most recommendations I've ever gotten in an author event, and I'm extremely impressed right now. So thank you so much. You even like have the spelling right of the Italian guy. So awesome. Question from Harry. I love that we're kind of bringing in multiple senses here. He's wondering, is there any particular music you pair with this book when you picture the score or music you listened to while you worked on it?
Oh man, that's a good question because for every project I do, I make a playlist. And
Oh, cool.
what that playlist does is it allows me, it like conditions me to launch or fall immediately back into the story space of that book so I don't have a warm-up period. Because when you're stealing time from yourself throughout the day to write chapters, scenes, sentences, whatever, you don't have time to warm up. And so what music does is it allows me to skip that warm-up period, and also it occupy I was talking about baffles occupying the critical part of your brain, like with poetry. I think if I'm listening to the right music, it can keep my mind busy such that I can do something real accidentally, you know? And my rule is it has to be music that I know inside out. It can't be anything new because then I'll listen to it. It has to be like the Footloose soundtrack or Quiet Riot or something, you
Wow.
know? And I only listen to it while I'm doing that project.
Gotcha.
That's a hard and fast rule I have. But I cannot remember what I was listening to for Memorial Ride. It was 5 years ago, and I bet my iTunes has probably corrupted 5 times since then. So I've lost all my playlists. So I
Yeah.
have no memory of what I was listening to. I wish I did, but the
Yeah.
question is, do I associate any like albums or songs or music with this? And yeah, actually, I kind of do. There's a I may have to tab over. Let me see if I can find it right
Yeah.
quick
Go for
to
it.
get the album name correct. Um, yeah, here it is. It's called Harley Davidson Motorcycles. That's
Oh,
like the big brand at top, the badge like they put on the gas tanks, and then it's just called Road Songs. And that's a really good. I think that's a really good album, and that's what I would associate with this because it's a road novel, a road story.
yeah. There's motorcycle is such a central part of it too.
Mhm.
Cool, cool. I wonder maybe you want to like start saving those playlists or something and like,
I should, man.
sell them as like or not sell them, but you could like release them as a, you know,
Yeah,
whatever it's called.
yeah. No, I should. As somebody said, Spotify. I just realized about 2 days ago that I've been paying for Spotify for like a year and a half, and I don't even know it. So I don't know why. I signed up for a trial, I guess. I don't have any idea, and I can't remember my Spotify password, so I don't know what's going to happen with that.
You got to reset the password and then make these because if you have 30 books, that's 30 playlists. Like
Yeah, yeah,
that's invaluable. And it also makes me
yeah.
like, when you listen to like so the Shins was playing or something and it dropped
Mhm,
me right back into like 10 years ago, what I was doing, the sense,
mhm,
like I was in New York and it was like so immediate. So I would imagine
yeah.
that if you're having that constraint with the music, like maybe it would kind of really bring you back really viscerally to that.
Yeah, well, but the weird thing is, I still have the playlist that I wrote this novel, All the Beautiful Sinners. It came out in '03. I still have that playlist, but the reason I have it is because I used to burn all my playlist to CDs, and so I had the CD, and I was able to bring the CD back to the iTunes. You know?
That's what we got to do. Old school analog CDs, yeah, for sure. Cool. Yeah, there appears to be a demand for your playlist. So file that away for
Yeah,
reader requests.
yeah.
You can pretend you didn't hear it if it's too much, just glitch out. Well, we're gonna have to wrap up in just a minute here, but I guess I just had one more question kind of related
Mhm,
to your process, which when you kind of talked about you just said the phrase something like stealing time, to kind of
mhm.
drop right in and write these chapters. So is that kind of how you work, how you always work?
It is. I consider myself, I don't know if I'm a binge writer or if I'm a time stealer, but like, back when Harry Potter books were coming out, I remember at the time we got to Goblet of Fire, the fourth book, we were all rabid, like that book came out and we just were like, on SpongeBob, there's the nematodes that just like they eat everything in their path. That's what we were like with with the Goblet of Fire. And I remember going around. I was living in Lubbock, Texas at the time, and going around, and everybody walking on the sidewalk was reading that big book. Everybody at traffic had it in their lap. They were reading.
Yeah.
Everybody in line at the bank was reading that book. And that's how I like to write novels too. I like to fit novels into these 5 minutes I have to stand in line at the bank. Or this stoplight or this walk down the sidewalk. I just fill every part of the day that I can with stolen sentences, stolen time. And I really think, me anyways, it's probably not this way for everybody. I do a lot more with stolen time than I do with scheduled time. If I know that somebody's waiting at the airport for me to pick them up and that they're going to be mad at me once I do finally get there, then I write a lot better,
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. I totally know what you're talking about. Yeah. That's so interesting. So then do you kind of, sorry, just to get into the weasel with your
Yeah.
process, do you collect all of those writings in one place and then later you go through a revision phase with it?
Yeah, I think you write the first draft of whatever you're writing with your heart, and then you come back with your brain and revise it. The brain is no good in the first draft, but it actually has some use later when you have to like pull on this lever and make this light come on, all that stuff that has to work. So yeah, I do. Whether I write in a little notebook or on the back of my hand, or I love summertime because in the summertime I'm always wearing shorts, and I can roll up my right shorts and write on my thigh and then roll my shorts down and nobody knows there's words all over my leg. And then I can go home and transcribe them onto something.
Yeah, hopefully it doesn't get too, that's why you moved to Boulder. So it wouldn't sweat off your legs.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, that's so interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that process. That's absolutely fascinating. Wow. Well, are there any final thoughts you'd like to leave us with tonight? It's been so much fun hearing about the book. So thank you so much.
Man, just I want to thank everybody for coming to book events and for hanging out at independent bookstores. I think that's what it's about, and it's an honor to get to talk to y'all about the ridiculous stuff I do. It feels like I'm cheating, like I've figured out a cheat code or I'm scamming everybody because I just get to talk to smart people about books. What could be better than that,
Yeah, well, we feel incredibly lucky as well to have you. So thank you so much. I can't wait to welcome you. 30 books down and you're not even 50 yet. So I'm sure the next few years are going to be very fruitful as well. And I would love to hopefully welcome you back to Bookshop virtually or in person. Really hope to do that. And yeah, just a reminder for everyone that the event has been recorded. We'll send that link out if you missed all those titles that were coming at you, you can review the recording and write those down and go to Bookshop Santa Cruz and buy them. We do have signed book plates that we will be distributing as well to customers. So yeah, thank you all so much for being here. And thank you so much, Stephen Graham-Jones. It has been a true honor to have you here with us tonight.
It's been great. Thank you for having me.
Take care.